just getting back to this defence budget. Starmer knew he wasn't going to put that up. I don't care what anyone says. He will have predicted, he'll have enough experts whispering in his ear and saying this is the situation. He more than implied that, the defence departments were going to get a fair share of money. They were going to be up in the ante. There was going to be new investment with them, bearing in mind the decline they've been in for the last 12 years or so, and it ain't going to happen. And you know what? He knew it wasn't going to happen. That almost verges on lies.
Keir Starmer's European tour was meant to be his grand debut on the world stage, a pivotal moment for him to establish himself as a genuine leader. Instead, it devolved into a series of humiliating incidents and awkward encounters that portrayed him as an inexperienced political novice. His efforts to present himself as a seasoned statesman ended in utter failure, ranging from being overlooked by Donald Trump to being sidelined from key events, which dealt a significant blow to his ambitions. The real shock came when he returned home to face fierce criticism from the media, which ruthlessly highlighted his lack of preparation and vulnerabilities. This was more than just a disappointment. It was a devastating hit to his reputation and aspirations for a bright future. Starmer set out on his European tour, brimming with ambition, hope, and confidence, positioning himself as a statesman eager to mend Britain's international relations and solidify his role as the future Prime Minister. His itinerary was meticulously crafted to showcase his diplomatic prowess, featuring high-profile meetings and events across the continent. Unfortunately, Starmer's dreams of gaining international recognition quickly crumbled, leaving him in a state of confusion and despair.
Last night, time and time again, Rishi Sunak was clobbering you over the head with that £2,000 tax line. It took you almost half an hour to call it garbage. What on earth took you so long?
What matters is the facts. None of our plans involve tax rises for working people, and I'll spell it out. No income tax rises, no national insurance, no VAT. But what emerged from last night, and this is a very important takeaway, is that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, with his back against the wall, desperately trying to defend their record in office, resorted to lies, and he knows he was lying. And I don't say that lightly. Lying about our plans, lying about waiting lists, and lying about boats. And therefore the choice at the election is even clearer now, which is to turn our back, turn a page on the lies, the division and the chaos of the last 14 years, and rebuild the country with Labour.
As the tour unfolded, Keir Starmer's efforts to uphold his image only served to underscore his vulnerabilities. His public remarks about international cooperation and global challenges came across as unconvincing and even pitiful, especially in light of his evident struggle to secure meaningful diplomatic agreements. However, the true climax of his European disaster was still looming. His meeting, or rather, the complete lack of one with Donald Trump in the United States, turned into a significant embarrassment. Despite Starmer's team promoting this meeting as an opportunity to restore a special relationship, Trump barely acknowledged his presence. Neil Gardner, a former advisor, delivered a scathing critique of Starmer's performance in Washington, labeling him weak and incompetent. This harsh judgment seemed to resonate with the general sentiment, sounding like a definitive verdict. Starmer failed to make any substantial impact on the international stage, and as he boarded the plane back to the UK, the enormity of his failure in Europe became painfully clear. What was meant to be a triumphant tour instead cast serious doubts on his ability to represent Britain's interests on the global stage.
There have long been rumours about Keir Starmer's private life, and they certainly aren't to do with any kind of doubts over his sexuality, if I can put it delicately. Okay. They are to do with his past and what the shape of his family really looks like. And it wouldn't be fair to go any further than that, but this is an open secret at Westminster that those question marks have been around for a long time, and papers have been extraordinarily restrained in not publishing any of that speculation. And even whether they've got, maybe there are publications that have more information than I'm aware of, they've been restrained. Why? Because there's been a strong feeling that it's not in the public interest.
The first significant setback for Keir Starmer came when he was barred from attending the opening ceremony of Notre Dame Cathedral. This was more than just a minor oversight, it was a glaring indication that Starmer lacked the influence he believed he had on the global stage. While he lingered in the background, other political leaders took center stage, and cracks began to form in his meticulously crafted image, threatening to unravel everything he had worked so hard to build. The fallout from this neglect was catastrophic. Political analysts were quick to point out that Starmer's exclusion from such a prominent event starkly highlighted his weak standing in international circles. One commentator bitterly noted that if Starmer couldn't even secure an invitation to the cathedral's opening, how could he possibly expect to successfully negotiate complex international agreements as Prime Minister?
Sir Keir Starmer, Your Majesty.
Your Majesty.
You must be utterly exhausted and nearly on your knees. But not much. Quite a grueling Anyway, you're here.
Yes.
It's a very sort of quick changeover. I know, to say the least. And having to get to grips with everything straight away must be quite exhausting.
During the interview, Keir Starmer's attempts to shift the topic ended in utter failure. The Labour leader found himself in a desperate predicament, struggling to regain control of the conversation, but his efforts appeared pitiful and futile. As excerpts from the interview quickly circulated on social media, the public's reaction was swift and unforgiving. Users mocked his inability to provide coherent answers, with many labeling the interview as extremely awkward and even comical. Political commentators also weighed in, highlighting that Starmer's communication style lacked clarity and effectiveness, further eroding confidence in his leadership. It became increasingly clear just how much political damage the media scandal had inflicted on Starmer. In mere moments, he transformed from a promising statesman into a leader desperately trying to defend his policies and connect with voters, yet instead appearing confused and insecure. The fallout for his leadership and the Labour Party was catastrophic, leaving his aspirations for greatness in tatters.
And we've seen billions upon billions upon billions of pounds of our taxes given away on overseas climate aid, and that was confirmed by Ed Miliband in the middle of July, that they are going to give £11.6 billion of our taxes to countries like Malaysia, who has a sovereign wealth fund worth $24 billion, whilst at the same time allowing our most vulnerable pensioners potentially to freeze to death in winter. It is despicable.
What do you think he should have done, Daniel, about the riots, if not take a firm hand? I mean, you've got societal tensions building here. He had to send a message, and a firm one, quickly.
Well, he did, Ali, and I know all about riots because in August 2011, with the London riots, I was on the front line as a police officer with a shield and a baton protecting Londoners and protecting Londoners' homes and businesses. But his response was incendiary, inflammatory, divisive, authoritarian and plain wrong. He should be uniting the country, not dividing us.
As Keir Starmer's credibility began to unravel, he encountered an even greater threat: the hostile British media, eager to pounce on every minor misstep. If he thought his meeting with Trump was uncomfortable, he was in for a shocking reality check. The British media, notorious for their merciless treatment of politicians, sharpened their knives in anticipation of his European tour. Here was a man who aspired to hold a second referendum, right? He was the Minister for Brexit, the shadow minister for Brexit, and he didn't answer to Jeremy Corbyn. Now they were poised to seize on every mistake and inconsistency, like predators ready to strike. Starmer was woefully unprepared for this onslaught. He struggled to articulate coherent answers to even the most straightforward political questions, and his uncertainty was palpable. When pressed about the reduction of winter fuel discounts, he made a critical blunder that would haunt him for days. He admitted that he had never faced difficulties paying for utilities, and this confession, like a dagger to his heart, immediately alienated listeners grappling with the harsh realities of the cost of living crisis.
All those sleaze scandals were really just to do with cabinet ministers having affairs, having mistresses. That doesn't wash anymore in modern day Britain. People actually don't care. You know, if one of our cabinet ministers has got a relationship with someone else, who cares?
Except if it has some bearing on legislation, if it has some bearing on the conduct of policy or laws that are being made. I mean, that's when it starts to become a problem, isn't it?
So you have to have a strong public interest defence to publish this stuff. And I think to date, the media has felt that there hasn't been a strong public interest defence. And in fairness to Sir Keir Starmer, whatever may or may not be going on in his past or in his private life, he has never posed with his family or children.
Following his disastrous media performance, one troubling question loomed larger. Can Keir Starmer recover from this self-inflicted wound, or has he already sealed his political fate? His European tour and subsequent media appearances delivered a crushing blow to his credibility. What was meant to be a striking display of his statesmanship devolved into a series of humiliating comments and awkward encounters, leaving him bewildered. Starmer's exclusion from the opening of Notre Dame Cathedral and his failure to meet with Donald Trump severely damaged his international standing, as if he had lost his last solid ground. However, the real harm was inflicted upon his return home. Confronted with a barrage of tough questions from BBC Row hosts, Starmer struggled to manage the situation, and his insecurity became glaringly obvious. His inability to clearly articulate policies or address voters' concerns came across as a desperate plea for help. The public's reaction was swift and unforgiving, with social media overflowing with mockery and harsh criticism, as if he had become a target for all.
It is obvious to me, and I think obvious to anybody looking in, that so far as the far right is concerned, this is coordinated, this is deliberate, this is not a protest that has got out of hand. It is a group of individuals who are absolutely bent on violence. And that's why it's important, I think, to pull together the senior police and law enforcement leaders, as we did today, to ensure that that is met with the most robust response in the coming days and weeks.
The pressing question now confronting British politics is, can Starmer bounce back from this disaster, or has his leadership already become irretrievable? The challenges ahead of him are immense and intimidating. He must work to rebuild public trust, offer a compelling alternative to the current government, and somehow shake off his reputation as a weak and disconnected leader. The future of the Labour Party and the British opposition hangs in the balance like a delicate glass orb. If Starmer fails to turn the situation around swiftly, the party may be forced to seek a new leader, which would be a significant loss. In these turbulent times, a strong and effective opposition is crucial for the health of British democracy, and all eyes are on him, eager to see if he can rise from the ashes. Share your thoughts in the comments, and see you later.